Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod Science classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see current affairs of 22nd September 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 8 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see the list of the topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So first topic it is about India's religious mix stable since partition. So this article mainly talking about India's religious mix. It is according to Pew Research study. Okay. So this will be important from our society which comes under GS paper 1. And next topic we are going to discuss it is about women in NDA. Now in this National Defense Academy, now it opened for women. So it is one of the important major step that we can say. Okay. So it is very much important for even women empowerment. So we can study this topic under social issues which comes under GS paper 2. And next topic it is about Kasturi Rangan to lead syllabus panel. So now here this 12-member committee head, it is our Kasturi Rangan, and he is going to lead the new syllabus panel. Okay, and they are going to come up with new syllabus, etc. That will be important from our education which comes under GS paper 2 again. And next topic is about fertility rates of Hindus and Muslims converging. So it is about TFR. So this is nothing but the extension of this first topic. So it is according to Pew Research study itself. So this will be important from our society which comes under GS paper 2 and even GS paper 1 under society and social issues. And next one is Asian Development Bank cuts India's 2021 to 2022 growth forecast to 10%. So this article will be important from our economy which mainly comes under GS paper 3. And next topic is about agri export basket. So it is mainly talking about food processing exports, processed food exports from the country. So this will be important from our economy which mainly comes under GS paper 3. And next topic is about AUKUS. It is a trilateral strategic partnership between Australia, UK and US. So we are going to discuss that. That will be important from international relations point of view. And next topic is about COVID-19 vaccines. So in yesterday's lecture we studied first topic like we are going to resume the export of COVID-19 vaccine, right? So this is the analysis of this yesterday's topic. So this will be important from health which comes under GS paper 2. So these are the topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. Now let's get started with our discussion and let us see the first topic. Title says India's religious mix stable since partition. Pew study. So this is the article which mainly talking about India's religious mix. If you see the context, it mainly says that the religious composition of India's population since partition. So since partition onwards, if you see the composition of Indian population which remained largely stable. So if you are talking about composition, that is between Muslims and Hindus. So these Muslims and Hindus, they are the two largest religious groups. They showing only a marked decline but also a convergence with fertility rates. Okay, so here these two largest religious groups in India, they are showing only a marked decline. And here if you are comparing with Hindus with Muslims, in Muslims we are having total fertility rate which is high compared to that of Hindus. So this is the data which is according to Pew Research Center. So this Pew Research Center, it is a non-profit organization which is mainly based in Washington DC. If you see details, it mainly says that the study mainly based on data which mainly sourced from India's decennial census. So based on this decennial census and National Health and Family Welfare, okay, National Family and Health Survey. So according to this NHFS National Health Family Survey, so according to this and even decennial census, so based on this data which is mainly taken from this census and even National Family Health Survey, so this study which is mainly based on. So this will be important prelims fact. And next one is they also looked at 3 main factors. So these 3 main factors are majorly they are causing some changes in religious composition. So these 3 causes or these 3 changes include fertility rate, migration and even conversions. So regarding this fertility rate, migration and conversions, so these are three major factors that are known to cause changes in the religious composition of a population. And if you're talking about regarding this total fertility rate, so study found that if you're comparing with Hindus, Muslims, they are having high TFR, total fertility rate. So what is this total fertility rate in the entire reproductive age of women? So how many children they can be given by that woman, that is called as total fertility rate. So if you are comparing in India, in southern India, total fertility rate which is less compared to that of this northern India. And now let us try to focus on some facts regarding what is this National Family Health Survey. So if you're talking about this National Family Health Survey, so it is one of large scale and it is a multi-round survey, and this survey which mainly conducted based on representative samples which are mainly collected from households throughout the India. So the data which will be collected from households throughout the India. And this survey, what is the significance? What this survey mainly provides? So this survey provides a state and national information for India. So it mainly provides stat and national information for India. So regarding different health parameters, for example, fertility, for example, infant and child mortality, for example, planning, family planning, maternal and child health, reproductive health of women, and nutrition, anemia, malnutrition, etc. So these are some important details that will be provided in this National Family Health Survey. So these are some important things that you need to remember. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says process to induct women in NDA, National Defence Academy, by May 2022. So this is a statement which is given by government. So it is mainly talking about women entry into this National Defence Academy. So till now women, they are not eligible. Now government mainly said that yes, we are going to come up with a process to induct women into this National Defence Academy. So this is one of important step which is taken by the government, and this is a step towards women empowerment. Okay, this is a step towards women's empowerment. So this topic will be important regarding GS paper 2 under social issues. Now let us see the context. If you see context, it mainly says that government has informed Supreme Court that the proposals have the mechanism to induct women cadets into this National Defence Academy for entry into armed forces to be ready in May 2022. So this article mainly says that our central government informed Supreme Court that they are going to induct women cadets into this National Defence Academy, and it will be very much helpful for entry of women into armed forces, and this will be ready by May 2022. By May 2022, they are going to induct women into this National Defence Academy. So if you are talking about some important details, it mainly says that, so our Ministry of Defence, MOD, Ministry of Defence, told Supreme Court that, so they are going to come up with the affidavit, and this by UPSC, Union Public Service Examination, Union Public Service Commission, that is UPSC, and now they are going to include women in its National Defence Academy exam notification. So actually for IAS, IPS, IFS, here UPSC will conduct exam, as you all know, and you are preparing for that exam, right? So even for this National Defence Academy entrance test, it will be conducted by UPSC. So now Ministry of Defence said court that they are going to come up with a affidavit, and in this affidavit now UPSC would include women also in its National Defence Academy and exam notification, and this will be published in May. This is mainly expected to published in May 2022. And this one is government hereby places on the record the clear and categorical stand that the women candidates shall be considered for entry in 3 defence services in the existing streams through NDA. Okay, so now with this announcement of government, now women candidates, they shall be considered for entry in 3 defence services. And now let us try to see what is the significance. Significance is nothing but it is a one of important step which taken by the government towards women empowerment. Because So this step will clear path for women to train along with men in this National Defence Academy. So this National Defence Academy was considered as a male bastion. So now it opened gates for even women. And after Supreme Court judgment last year, which led to permanent commission for women officers, so it is the second time the court has nudged the armed forces towards great gender equality. So this is one of the steps that we can ensure there is gender equality in these armed forces. And now let's try to see the background. So this background I took from the print. Okay. So if you see the background, it mainly says that. So recently Apex Court, our Supreme Court was hearing a plea which mainly filed by advocate, that is Kush Kalla. So this plea or petition mainly raised the issue of exclusion of eligible and willing female candidates from joining the prestigious National Defence Academy solely on the ground of sex, which allegedly it is violating the fundamental right of equality. So let me know which article in our constitution which mainly talks about this right to equality. Okay, so let me know in comment box. So recently Supreme Court mainly hearing one petition which mainly filed by advocate. So this petition mainly says that exclusion of female who are eligible and as well as willing female candidates from joining this National Defence Academy. So here one ground here which mainly said here is female. Okay. So only based on the ground of sex, which allegedly it is violating the fundamental right of equality. So later on this plea said authorities to allow unmarried male candidates having adequate 10+2 qualification to take National Defence Academy and Naval Academy examination. But in the same way here, females who are eligible and willing female candidates, they are not allowed to take the examination because the sole ground here is based on their sex. Without it is having some reasonable and as well as it is not having any justifiable explanation here. So because of the Supreme Court ordered government to resolve this issue. So this is the background of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says Kasturi Rangan to lead syllabus panel. So this article mainly talking about the syllabus panel. Okay, so now Center came up with one decision that the center started the process to revise school textbooks. So actually one important problem we are facing in our education is, so whatever the books we are reading, they are not updated till date. So because of this, we are mainly lagging behind the whatever the technology which is happening around our world. So here the center mainly started the process to revise school textbooks. How can they revise the school textbooks? By appointing former ISRO Indian Space Research Organization chairman, that is K. Kasturi Rangan. So he will be the head of 12-member steering committee, and the steering committee which is very much responsible for developing new national curriculum framework. So they need to develop this new national curriculum framework. It is the responsibility of this 12-member steering committee. And now let us try to see the details. So Dr. Kasturi Rangan also chaired the drafting committee of National Education Policy 2020, which mainly recommended for the development of this national curriculum framework. So because of this, now he is going to head the steering committee and they are going to come up with updating of the textbooks. So the steering committee has been given a tenure of 3 years to complete its task. And here the important functions of this committee, it is to come up with a guiding document for development of textbooks, what should be the syllabus, and even teaching practices in schools across the country. So these are some important details. And now let us try to see some facts. So if you're talking about this, especially the steering committee, they will develop 4 frameworks. So one framework, it is to guide the curriculum of school education. Next one, it is about teacher education. And third one, it is about early child education. Next one is adult education. So these are the 4 frameworks of the steering committee. So this is just of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says fertility rates of Hindus and Muslims converging. It is according to study. So this article mainly says that it is about fertility rate. So what is this TFR? So woman, whenever she is entering into reproductive stage, So in this reproductive stage, how many children that woman she can give birth, that is called as TFR. So when this TFR will be high, whenever women are illiterate, especially in rural areas, whenever these women do not have a proper knowledge regarding health, and even whenever there is a patriarchal mindset that is seen, so because of all these things, TFR will be increased. And whenever this TFR is decreased, so whenever women who are educated properly, they are going outside for their jobs, and whenever the woman is given decision making power regarding whether she is ready to come up with a child or not. So in this way here we can control this TFR. So this article will be important regarding health point of view, and even we can talk from a society and social issues point of view as well. If you see context, it mainly says that a new study on religious composition. So recently a new study on religious composition of India's population since partition said that there is declining and even there is conversion, that is meeting of this fertility patterns of Hindus and Muslims. So this study mainly said that regarding this TFR, total fertility rate, India's population since partition, that mainly declining and even converging fertility patterns that is seen on Hindus and Muslims. So there have been only marginal changes in overall religious composition of population since 1951. Since 1951, there have been only some marginal changes in overall religious composition. So whenever we conducted, when we conducted this India's first census of as independent nation, so if you are comparing with that, so overall we can see there is a declining and as well as converging fertility patterns that is seen. So if you see details, it mainly says that from 1992 to 2015, from 1992 to 2015, so total fertility rate TFR in Muslims which mainly declined from 4.4 to 2.6. Okay, so now TFR in Muslims had been decreased from 4.4 to 2.6, and if you are comparing with Hindus, it may decline from 3.3 to 2.1. So here this data mainly indicates the gaps in childbearing between India's religious groups are much smaller than they used to be. So earlier it was 4.4, it is 3.3, and now it decreased to 2.6 to 2.1. That means, so whatever the gap it is present between Hindus and Muslims, that is mainly decreasing or smaller. So the average fertility rate in India, it is 2.2, which was higher than the rates in economically advanced countries. For example, in US, TFR it is 1.6, and if you see here, in 1992, TFR in US was 3.4. In 1951, TFR it is 5.9, and but it is just 1.6 now. And if you see in India, it is 2.2. It is well and good. And next one is between. If you see the data which is given in this article, so this data you can use whenever you are writing means answer. So data between 1951 to 1961, Muslim populations they expanded by 32.7%. and 11 percentage points more than India's overall rate of 21.6. Overall rate of India is 21.6, okay, but here Muslim population mainly expanded by 32.7%. That is between 1951 to 1961, and later on the gap which mainly narrowed, that is from 2001 to 2011. The difference in growth between Muslims and Indians overall was 7 percentage point. It mainly decreased from 21.6 to 7%. And if you are talking about in terms of percentage, between 1951 to 2011, Muslims mainly grew the percentage by 4 percentage points to 14.2% of population, and Hindus declined by 4.3 points to 79.8%. So this is the data, and you need not to be exactly remember those points. Okay, so you have to remember like, yes, compared to so and so, here we have decreased, or here we have increased. So you can like that, and it is according to Pew Research report like that. So if you are talking about major religious groups in India, we are having 6 major groups. They include Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains. So among these 6 religious groups, they have been grown, population have been grown in absolute number. But one community, that is Parsis, whose number have been halved between 1951 and 2011. So in 1951 there were about 1,10,000 Parsis, it decreased to 60,000 Parsis. So if you are talking about out of India's total population is of about 1200 million, so about 8 million did not belong to any 6 major religious groups within this category. But some people, they also belongs to this Adivasi category or Adivasi people. So the largest group of Adivasi in India, they include Sarnas. So Sarnas are nearly 5 million adherents. And next one is Gond, they are about 1 million, and Sare Dharma, it is about 5,10,000. So this is about data regarding tribals or Adivasis. And next one is observing that a preference for sons over daughters that may lead to increasing of TFR. And if you're talking about TFR especially, the study mainly noted that women in central India, they tend to have more children with Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So they are mainly showing the total fertility rate of about 3.4 and 2.7 respectively. And even if you are talking about this TFR of 1.7 and 1.6 in Tamil Nadu, and even we can see just 1.6 of TFR in Kerala. So if you are comparing with northern India, central India and southern India, so in northern and central India there is increasing or high TFR than compared to that of the southern states. For example, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So this is gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says Asian Development Bank cuts India's 2021-22 growth forecast to 10%. So again there is a backdrop or dropping of this India's growth forecast by ADB. So this article will be important from our economy point of view, which mainly comes under GS paper 3. And now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. First, let us try to see context, why it is in news. So here Asian Development Bank ADB, which mainly cut its forecast for India's GDP growth, that is from 2021 to 2022, it mainly decreased to 10%. Earlier it came up with 11%, but again it downgraded to 10%. So now let us try to see the details. If you see details, it mainly says that the ADB also sees rising input cost regarding there is high inflation especially. And because of this inflation, there might be decrease in the demand. So because of this, here it downgraded from 11% to 10% of growth forecast. So while this COVID-19 second wave has disrupted the recovery, since ADB's April forecast for 11%. So earlier in April, ADB came up with the forecast of 11%. After that, we entered into second wave. So because of this second wave, it mainly disrupted the recovery. And even many banks, they expect that the economy it is to rebound strongly to the remaining 3 quarters. In upcoming 3 quarters, we are going to expect some type of rebound. And here, we are also expecting the growth by 10% in full fiscal year before moderating to 7.5% in 2022 to 23. And now let us try to see what are the reasons for inflation. So actually there is increasing of global oil prices. Okay, so whenever there is an increasing of global oil prices, finally the cost of this petrol and diesel will also be increased. So whenever the price of this petrol and diesel is increasing, that will lead to increase in the total cost of the goods and services. And next one is rising price for oil and as well as other commodities, that will further increase input and as well as transportation cost for producers. And that will pass on to the consumers, that will lead to less demand in the market. Finally, that will lead to delay in our economic recovery. So this is gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. We are going to see editorials now. Title says Changing Agri Exports Basket. So this article mainly talking about food processing sector in India. And this topic is at most important from our UPSC mains point of view, that too from economy under GS paper 3. If you see the central theme of this article, it mainly says that India has potential. India has potential to become a global leader in the food processing sector. So now let us try to see how. So context mainly says that now recently Indian government has been encouraging agriculture exports, and the important ambition or aim of this India's exports here is, target here is about $60 billion by 2022. So we are having an ambition or aim of, target of our exports is $60 billion by 2022. So in this context, Ministry of Food Processing Industries, they mainly shows that the contribution of agricultural and processed food products in India's total exported is just 11%. So whatever the thing we are exporting, whatever the goods we are exporting, so out of this exporting the processed foods, they are very less, that is about 11%. So because of this, now we are mainly focusing to increase value added processed food rather than primary processed agricultural commodities. So whenever we are exporting this processed goods, so we are going to have more returns or more profits than compared to that of this primarily processed agricultural commodities. And if you are talking about data that is from 2015 to 2016 till 2019 to 20, so the value of agricultural and food processed increased, that is from $17.8 billion to $20.65 billion. So if you are comparing with data from 2015 to 2019, so there is increasing of exports of this processed foods. And if you see in this context, Indian agriculture economy, it is mainly shifting from primarily to secondary agriculture. So secondary agriculture nothing but processed foods. So where here mainly focusing on developing various food process, that is processed foods. So if you are talking about change over years, so what are the change we are seeing in the trade? So if you are talking about especially agricultural exports, export basket, it is changing from traditional commodities to non-traditional processed food. We are converting that traditional commodities into this non-traditional processed foods. And traditionally basmati rice. So if you see this basmati rice, it is one of the top export commodities earlier. But now even non-basmati rice exports have been increased. So recently there are many organic food, organic rice varieties from Assam. For example, red rice or Baodan also had been increased their exports. And if you are talking about in international market, there is huge demand for Indian buffalo meat, especially in Vietnam, Hong Kong and as well as Indonesia, because we are having a lean character and even we are mainly going for this near organic nature. So the important aim of this recently come up by this government, that is agriculture export policy, it is to diversify and even it is focusing to expand the export basket so that instead of primary goods, the export of higher value items including perishables and as well as processed goods, that will be very much increased. So this is about this agriculture export policy. And if you are talking about causes now or concerns now regarding this food processing industry here is, so exporters of processed food, they are facing many difficulties and as well as non-tariff barriers. So if you are talking about international trade, we are having a trade tariffs and as well as non-tariffs. Tariff means nothing but duties or taxes, but non-tariff mainly includes other things like phytosanitary measures, etc. So here whenever we are mainly exporting this processed foods, so we are coming across with this non-tariff measures. And here whenever we are going to export this processed food means we need to take mandatory pre-shipment examination by export inspection agency being lengthy and costly. So whenever we want to export this food processed food here, so we need to check pre-shipment examination. So this examination should be conducted by inspection agency and this will be very much costly and as well as lengthy process. And as well as if you are talking about this compulsory spice board certification, so compulsory spice board certification which is also being needed whenever we are mainly exporting these goods. And as well as there is lack of strategic planning of exports by most of the state governments, and even other important issues like there is lack of predictable and even consistent agriculture policy which mainly discouraging the investments of this private sector. And this one is whenever we are going for the prohibition of import of this meat and dairy based products in most of the advanced countries. Okay, So whenever we are mainly sending this, then what happened? So there is a prohibition of import of meat and dairy based products also. And next one is, recently we know that from this generalized preferences of US, okay, under this GTA system, generalized system of preferences, that is GSP system. So under this GSP system, India's name mainly withdrawn. So because of this, now if we want to export any other food processed items, then we need to take additional health certificate as well. So these are some issues or concerns regarding this food processing exports or processed food exports. So what can be done? So there are 3 steps that are given in this article. So first one is, the central policies that should be in direction to nurture food processing companies. And finally, we need to ensure there is a low cost of production, and we can go for technology incorporation, and we need to create a technically support to environment that will help mainly to promote the export of the goods. And next one is, even there are many reputed Indian brands. So these reputed Indian brands, they need to be encouraged to export processed food globally. And next one is, Indian companies, they need to focus on the cost of competitiveness, and even they need to focus on global food quality, and they need to focus on maintaining of standards and technology. So in this way, we can tap this global market of this processed food. So this is the gist of this topic, and I hope it's clear. Now let us move on to next topic. Title says, a welcome decision. So this article, it is nothing but analysis of yesterday's first article. So yesterday's first article we discussed so India, it is going to resume the export of this COVID-19 vaccines. So yesterday article we studied that there is a vaccine inequity or inequality that is seen, right? So mainly to address that, India took a decision to resume this COVID-19 vaccine export. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So if you see, India took a decision mainly to resume the export of this COVID-19 vaccines. So it is one of the welcome move to address the huge vaccine inequity globally. To address this vaccine inequity globally, so it is one of the important step that India took. And India will from October resume this exporting of this COVID-19 vaccines to other countries. So this decision mainly comes after our government severely restricted vaccine exports in May and stopped them in March. So here what happened, we came up with a restriction, that is decreased the exports of this vaccines, and by mid-April we completely stopped the export of this COVID-19 vaccines. So now what happened, now we are again going to renew our vaccination drive, that is known as Vaccine Maitri. So this Vaccine Maitri will first prioritize the global vaccine sharing platform, that is COVAX, and it is going to export vaccines for the nearby or neighboring countries. And if you are talking why we came up with the stopped, or why we came up with this decreasing or stopping of this vaccine export to other countries, because there was increase in daily fresh cases and even deaths in this second wave of this coronavirus. So because of this, whatever the manufacturers, they are coming up with manufacturing, so they are not meeting the domestic demand. So because of this, we changed our priorities and we started increasing our vaccination drive in our country. So because of this, vaccines exports have been put on hold. So not only India but also even many other developed countries, they are also holding the vaccines, and they started prioritizing their domestic people vaccination. So as a result, what happened, about 80% of nearly 6 billion doses which are administered globally, and these vaccinations that have been administered in high and as well as upper middle income countries. And so it is because of this, now we can see vaccine inequity that is striking in Africa. Just 2% of 6 billion doses that have been administered in Africa. So because of this, less than 3.5% of population have been fully vaccinated in South Africa, or we can say like Africa. So here, while the efforts are being made through COVAX mainly to increase the vaccine supply to Africa, but still about 25% of doses, 25% of your doses that have been anticipated by end of 2021. So even though if you are taking steps now, and if you want to increase the export of vaccines to Africa, so here we can export just 25%. That is a very few doses. than anticipated, than required in Africa by end of 2021. So if you see some data, it mainly says that only 15% of over 1 billion doses they have been pledged by the developed countries, they have reached Africa. So even not only India but as well as other countries, other developed countries like US and also other developed countries, they are mainly focusing for approval of the booster dose. That means after taking these 2 doses of this COVID-19 vaccine, another dose will be given. They are mainly focusing on this booster dose. So if you see the concerns here, so whenever there is vaccine inequity is happening, then there will be the virus which will be circulating from one person to another person. So whenever the virus which is transmitted from one person to another person, they have the ability or they have the capability or ability to mutate themselves. That will lead to new mutant virus. So these mutant viruses are most challenging to control. So in this context, what is the need? The need here is we need to quickly ramp up the vaccine production and we need to export them to Africa or other countries. So this is gist of this topic. And now let us move on to the next topic. So before seeing this topic, I want to make a small announcement on this platform. If you want to clear UPSC 2022, we came up with one excellent, highly beneficial course, that is Current Affairs package along with this mains answer writing practice. So how this course will be useful? So one thing I want to say is before entering into examination hall, you need to know at least 1.5 years current affairs for sure. And this is right time to join this course to cover this 1.5 years current affairs in a comprehensive manner. And next one is, we are also focusing on this mains answer writing practice. Because even though if you clear prelims and after clearing prelims, if you are entering into mains hall without answer writing practice, you can't answer those 20 questions within a limited period of time. So you need enough answer writing practice. You need to structure your answer and you need to write your answer within 7 to 7.5 minutes. So for this, you need a great answer writing practice. So if you join this course, you are going to write more than 300 answers and more than 50 essays. So in this way, this course will give you enough answer writing practice. And next one is, we are also conducting prelims test on every Sunday and we provide you video explanation part. So in this way, this course which is designed as per demand of UPSC. So finally, I want to say one thing. Please don't take this course as a choice. Try to join this course as soon as possible and achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. And the details of this course is given in description box. So please visit that once. And if you want to talk to me directly, you can call to this number 8074765513. Okay. And now let's come back and let us see the next topic, that is the big deal behind the AUKUS over AUKUS. It is about AUKUS. AUKUS, it is nothing but a trilateral strategic partnership between 3 countries. So if you see context here, so UK, US and Australia, they have announced a historic security pact, especially in this Asia Pacific region. So in this Asia Pacific region, they came up with historic security pact. So in what it is mainly came to counter China actually. So this pact is also called as AUKUS Pact or AUKUS Alliance. So now let us try to see some important details of this alliance. So if you see details, it mainly says that, so under this AUKUS Alliance, so 3 nations, they have agreed to enhance development regarding joint capabilities and even sharing of technology, and to foster the development and integration of internal security or security, defense related science, technology and even industrial based supply chain. So first important thing they mainly talked here is, first of all, in this AUKUS they came up with 2 important things. So first one is mainly for enhancement of development regarding joint capabilities, and they are mainly focusing on technological transfer and they will focus on security and as well as defense related issues. And second one is, Australia will going to build fleet of nuclear powered submarines. So Australia is going to build this nuclear powered submarines with the help of US and UK, and they are also having the capability and it will be helpful mainly for promoting of stability in this Indo-Pacific region. So what is the China response here? China condemned this agreement, okay, condemned this agreement. And if you see some of the concerns which are mainly posed by China include, This alliance undermines regional peace, stability, and as well as it intensifies this arms race in this Indo-Pacific region. So it is the first thing which mainly said by China. And China also said that it will lead to reinvention of this Cold War mentality and also ideological prejudice. So these are some important statements which is given by China. So if you see what is the rationale behind this establishment of this alliance. So first one is this new partnership was announced in joint virtual press conference, and they did not mention about China here. So they did not mention about countering of China. So they mainly said that especially for security concerns, they are mainly coming up with this alliance. And this one is in recent year, Beijing has been accused for raising tensions, especially in the disputed territories in South China Sea region. Okay, and next one is even the Western nations, they have been wary of China's infrastructure investment in Pacific Islands, and it also criticized this China's trade sanction against countries like Australia. So regarding this Australia also, there are some bad relations which is happening between this China and Australia. Mainly to counter this China, they came up with this alliance. So this is just of this topic. I hope it is clear. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll to this current affairs package. So this package is going to be entered by October 1st week. So if you want to join, please hurry up. Thank you so much.